We all have messy moments in our life, right? I mean, if you're me, it's more than sometimes. Well, our next guest says we shouldn't hide from our messes. We should learn from them. Seattle's Shari Leid has a new book out. It's called Make Your Mess Your Message. And I spoke to her about why she says you should also be asking your friends about their messes, too. I love the message here. The message is about a mess. So what prompted you to start the journey of asking your friends, what is the mess that became your message?
Well, last year when our city went into stay-at-home orders, I was at home with my whole family like everyone else, and I decided to start taking master classes. My first one was Robin Roberts' conversation class, and in it she said that her mom taught her to make her messes her messages, and that's what sparked the idea.
I love that. Let's talk a little bit about what that means. Tell us how a mess can become a message.
Well, I think one of the women I spoke to, who's a professional obstacle racer, her name's Rose Wetzel, also from this area, she really said it simply. Messes are like obstacles. We have them all the time, but they're not there to stop us. They're there to redirect us. And so it was fascinating talking to these women, all who I knew at some level, some good friends, some more recent acquaintances, and finding out what were those messes that actually, diverted them and changed their direction and became messages.
Wow, I can imagine you have so many incredible stories. Is there any one particular story that has a lasting impact on you?
There's one story. It was my former paralegal. I used to practice law, former paralegal 20 years ago. She shared a story about her family's struggle with her son's addiction. And as she shared the story with me, I realized, living in this area, I had stopped seeing the homeless as individuals, and her son had ended up on the street. And as she shared this story, I realized that, and as a result of it, I got some backpacks, filled it with supplies, and started carrying supplies in my car. And from that, I used to, be at the stoplight and try to avoid eye contact with anyone standing on the corner. Now I make eye contact, I grab my bag, I roll down the window, and I've had some of the most heartfelt, amazing conversations in that short period of time as I hand over the backpack and make that eye contact. So that story really it affected my daily life.
Thank you for sharing that. That is very profound, especially for all of us in Seattle who do see it every day, who have maybe become blind to it. Thank you for sharing that. What are some tips and tools that you learn to navigate life's obstacles and maybe gain control over the messes?
I think a big tip and tool is to look at your past messages. And it was funny, as I asked these questions to these women, they a lot of times hadn't reflected on their past messages and where it brought them to. So when we look at our past messes, losses of jobs, the apartment or home we didn't get, relationships failing, when we actually look back at that, I bet 9 times out of 10, those messes actually brought us to something better, a better job, a nicer neighborhood, a more fulfilling relationship. And as we start to see that pattern, it makes dealing with our current mess just a little bit easier.
I have to say, I kind of 100% agree with you on that. It really is amazing how those obstacles really led us to where we're supposed to be. How has having these conversations with your friends deepened these friendships?
We talk to our friends all the time. We very rarely ask the story. What were the messes in their lives? I was so surprised that even with my long-term friends, I hadn't known what had gone on in their lives prior to meeting them, or even sometimes while we were in this friendship. And once we start to dive deeper and hear the other person's story, we start to build a trust that we didn't have before. And once we start building more trust, we naturally feel more connected, and these relationships deepen. Even the more recent relationships I had that I went through this process with, they immediately, that trust was built and that connection was made.
Such a good point. Well, I've taken up enough of your time, but I just have to ask before we let you go, what do you hope people take away from your book?
I would love to challenge others to do this. I suggest 3 people. Tell them ahead of time that you're going to ask them what is the mess that became their message, so you don't surprise them. And they really can then think about it. I suggest asking a good friend, a more recent acquaintance, and a relative, and find out where those conversations go. I guarantee they will change the relationship for the better.
Great advice.